This video we're going to talk about adding and subtracting polynomials, and we're going to find like terms to do so. Okay, so suppose that I give you as an example, as the first example, x squared minus y squared plus 3y minus 4x squared plus 3y minus 4xy. How would you combine like terms here? So let's find like terms. So I see like terms. So how do you find like terms? Like terms are found by looking at the variables and finding their respective exponents. Okay? So if there's only one variable with a certain exponent number, you find that same variable with the same exponent number and match these terms accordingly. Okay, so let's find, so I see x squared. Where else is there only x squared in the term? Well, right here, right? There's x squared. Never mind the constant yet. Just look at the variable and the exponent number. You see they're the same, x squared and x squared. So I'm going to underline these. And then let's find another one. Well, let's look at the y squared for a second. Do you see anywhere y squared? I don't see anything, right? So we can't match the y squared with anything else. Okay, let's look at the y, the 3y. Let's look at the y. Is there any y? Right there, right? So 3y. So I'm gonna underline it twice. Okay. So, and everything else is just stands by itself because there's no xy. Remember that when you have two variables, like xy in this case, you will have to find the product xy in any other term in order to match it. Okay, so I don't see xy anywhere here. So these guys stand by themselves. So we only have x squared and 4x squared and 3y and 3y, and everything else is just separate and stands by itself, the y squared and 4xy. So we can combine these like terms, right? So now let's see what happens. X squared will be added to 4x squared, right? Because there's a plus sign before the 4. So that means basically what we're trying to do is we're going to do x squared plus 4x squared. And how does it work to combine? Well, we're just going to add their respective coefficients because notice, and how do we know that the coefficients will be added? Because x squared is the common factor, right? So we're going to take this factor out and we're going to have 1 plus 4, right? Because if you work distributively using the distributive property, you will apply the x squared to both 1 and 4. So you will get x squared plus 4x squared, right? And then you simply do x squared 5, right? Because 1 plus 4 is 5. And then you simply rewrite the 5 to the left of the x squared in the product to arrive at 5x squared. Okay? Now the same thing will be done to the second pair that we found of like terms. So we're going to have 3y and then plus 3y, right? So we're going to add 3y and 3y together. And also we're going to do, so now we're going to work with the constants again, the coefficients, because the variables are the same. That's the principle of finding like terms. So you can simply work with their coefficients. So it's going to be y, take the y out because it's a common factor, and then apply the distributive property backwards, right? So we're going to have 3 plus 3 times y, and that's going to give us 6y, okay? So now everything else remains the same. So as a result, we're looking at 5x squared plus 6y minus y squared minus 4xy, right? So that's your final result. Okay, that's your final result. And this is the same polynomial, believe it or not, really, because you're combining like terms. You're not really changing the polynomial, you're just combining like terms. And notice that the degree of the polynomial remains unchanged. Why? Because the exponents for the variables in each term, they will never be decreased nor increased. They will stay the same. The only thing that changes is how you combine the coefficients, the coefficient number of the respective variable. Okay, because notice that the degree of this polynomial was what before? It was 2, right? Because the 2 was the leading exponent in many terms. Actually, in 3 terms, 2 was the leading exponent. So the degree of this polynomial was 2. But notice that even in this polynomial, which is essentially the same polynomial because we simply added like terms, the degree is still 2. That's the highest degree. So the degree of the polynomial does not change when you combine like terms to simplify a polynomial and make it a polynomial of less number of terms. Okay? So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in my next video. We're going to talk about adding and subtracting polynomials. Take care.